With more and more Star Wars content being introduced to us every year, there are new generations who have never experienced what it was like to live during the original days of Star Wars. Is the original trilogy the best era, or are we older Star Wars fans confused with nostalgia? Today I'm gonna go deeper on that question. Out of all these eras, is the original Star Wars trilogy the best of them all? The world got introduced to Star Wars in 1977, starting a global pop culture phenomenon of 3 films that spanned into 1983. Besides 2 other Ewok spin-off movies, we wouldn't get to see another movie about the Skywalker saga until 1999 with The Phantom Menace. Look, I collect vintage Star Wars toys, and even though the modern toys are better quality in both art and production, they have more articulation, and the packaging quality is even better. To me, there will never be better toys than the originals. But I can see where nostalgia blinds me in saying that those are better, where I'm confusing a rich history with better quality. So I had to go back and watch all 3 original films all over again. And I have all the original versions on VHS, so I watched those. And I watched the versions that are on Disney Plus as well, the ones that have the digital updates that George Lucas made. But this video isn't about that. In fact, those digital updates don't really matter in this exercise. And I also watched the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy, just so I can refresh myself with this question in mind. Which era is better? I had to judge this purely on storytelling, and I had to forget nostalgia. I had to forget about box office numbers or which ones had the best toys. I had to ask myself these questions. Are the characters well written? Is the plot predictable, or does the audience get a fresh take on a new story? Do the beats of the movie, its pacing, and scenes make sense together? Star Wars is based on a lot of classic myths, fairy tales, movies, and deep roots in the psychology of religion. The Hero with 1,000 Faces, written in 1949 by Joseph Campbell, in which George Lucas was actually a student of Campbell's at USC, that book breaks down the many faces of a hero and how these heroes have been portrayed for thousands of years in storylines. That book heavily influenced the way Star Wars was told, almost as Greek mythology, with the wise old man, the young hero, the evildoers, the princess, the brave companion, along with farce and comedic or loyal sidekicks. Lucas incorporates these themes so well, it's as if he creates it from scratch, even though stories like these have been told for ages. Our hero, as we all know, is Luke Skywalker, a young farm boy from the deserts of Tatooine who dreams of more but is trapped in the reality of day-to-day mundane life. Until one day, young Luke's life is crossed by fate with the introduction of the droids, which leads him to the wise old wizard, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke learns about his destiny, and the film is set into motion when the family that Luke lives with is killed. And we know there is no going back for Luke. He must pursue this journey with old Ben, going to the aid of Princess Leia. Luke also learns of his family's ability in a mystic religion called the Force, and this puts Luke in the same position as the audience. We are learning about the world just as Luke is. This makes us, the audience, feel more connected to Luke. And the first thing that we read in Star Wars, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That line really tells the audience this really happened. Even though these events happened in the past, it's meant to be seen as real history. And the way the movie looks, with nothing looking out of the ordinary, everything looks used, functional, and old, you can believe it's real. It was a great way to make the audience feel like this galaxy could have really existed. The people, relatable. That's why relating to Luke in the first moments of this journey is so important. We, the audience, are on the same level as Luke. We are going on this journey with him. And as we go on this journey, we make more friends. We learn of the evil that's in the world. We are no longer innocent. We are forced to face danger, and we have no choice but to move forward and never look back. This movie is an ensemble piece. Every character gives something to the plot and moves the plot along. Characters change and grow, and there's even character sacrifice so that the story and other characters can move along in the plot. And our hero, with the help of his new friends, believes he can change, and at some point, our hero must face his challenge alone and make the ultimate action to save not only his friends, but the bigger galaxy, even though he faces a challenge that seems impossible. In the end, our hero uses his supernatural gifts that he needed to find the confidence within himself to use, and he returns to his new life with his new friends in a new cause as the hero of the galaxy. But of course, if you watch Star Wars, you already know this plot. But when you break down this movie after reading Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, it seems like a simple plot. But again, George Lucas made it so fresh with the setting, the relatable characters, the used universe art design, that when this movie came out in 1977, it felt fresh. Fans claimed it as theirs. It was their movie. They saw it 2, 3, 4 times. They told their friends. They talked about it at school, at work, at church. It was mainstream. It was a pop culture phenomenon that transcended age, much like The Wizard of Oz did decades before. It crossed outside the theater doors, crossed borders, languages, and made its way into people's homes and lives, into everyday speech. May the Force be with you. And I'm gonna save talking about the writing, editing, pacing, and other technical aspects of these films. I'm going to save that for another video. But those items are also important to why this era might be the best. But let's talk about the characters. Subconsciously, these characters appealed to me the same way popular characters have appealed to audiences since the days of the cavemen, to the Greek heroes, and all the way to today in modern film. The character of Luke is the everyday person, and in Star Wars, we get the story unveiled for us in real time. We are discovering things like him. We are normal, regular people like him, and we go on an adventure through him because we relate to him. When we meet him, he isn't a superhero, but he has a destiny calling to him to an adventure to find out if he is indeed this superhero. And then we have the wise mentor who knows about the bigger world, but he isn't an all-powerful hero, more of a teacher and a guide to the bigger, more supernatural world. He doesn't grant powers, but he shows the path the hero must walk down to achieve a destiny only the hero can unlock. Then we get the rough warrior, the person who knows the bad side of the world and how corrupt and dark it can be. He represents us when we are negative, sarcastic, when we are the naysayer, looking out for oneself and no one else, and brings us, the audience, back down to reality. But toting this line of good and evil is what makes good characters great characters. It's characters like this that have the most soul-searching to do, and often make the hard choices to keep their story and the main storyline more exciting to watch as their character and decisions unfold. Then we have the leader, the monarch, the one who knows the big picture as well as what's going on behind the scenes, the one who has the big idea but doesn't know exactly how to accomplish it. She isn't all powerful, but she's smart, cares for the people around her, and determined to fight for what's right in the world. This character brings the main idea and the problem to the story and sets the action in motion. Even when she's imprisoned, there are others who are willing to risk their lives for her and her cause. Then we have the almost narrators, the sidekicks, telling us where we are, what's at stake, and who is who in this galaxy. They are both moving along the plot, they're tension breakers, they help the main character solve problems with their technical skills, they add comedy relief, and are companions, not only for the main characters, but for us, the audience. The movie really takes place in 3 parts: escaping from Tatooine, rescuing the princess, and then the battle on the Death Star, with each act having its own beginning, middle, and end. You could have released these acts as movies of the week on television, and we would have been in suspense to see how this plays out week after week. But if you're to break down current Star Wars films, they drastically go away from this structure, at least for the first movie, jumping from planet to planet, introducing character after character, and making a frantic pace scene after scene. They try to cram as much knowledge down an audience member's throat without building up stakes or the emotion for you, the viewer, to really become emotionally invested in the characters or story. So taking nostalgia out of this, as a story, A New Hope leans on what works in classic fairy tale and epic poem story structures. It's not breaking new cinematic ground like a film who shakes up the plot or timelines of how we piece together a film storyline. It just takes us on a classic tale, but introduces us to a whole new world with characters that we root for and villains that we think are believable, cool, and actually have the upper hand against the heroes. Then there are the special effects, which have held up over time, even when you watch the despecialized versions. And to get to this level of artistry, coming from so many different departments, from script writing, production design, cinematography, acting, sound design, score, editing, effects, and even marketing, it's lightning in a bottle. Something that Hollywood has been trying to reproduce and sell to us in mass amounts. But when it happens organically and out of nowhere from a kid from Modesto who liked to race cars, that surpasses logic and comes into the realm of serendipity meets pure iron will. And the movie does it so quietly. It doesn't brag that it's a huge effects movie. It has mostly no-name actors in it. It didn't try to appeal to trends of the day by having popular music or huge stars or political agendas. It was set in an unknown place in an unknown time. It just appealed to us on a human level. But we, the audience, we turned it into a spectacle. And as every movie maker knows, once it leaves your editing room for distribution, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the world. The Empire Strikes Back, released in 1980. Critically and in fans' hearts, people have said that this is the best Star Wars movie of all time. In fact, one of the best movies of all time. This was set at a time when sequels were just money grabs. And yes, every movie is a money grab. You don't invest in a movie's production to see it fail. But in Hollywood at the time, sequels were garbage. They were made too quick, without thought to the script, casting, production, and you can never catch the magic that was made in the original film. There were exceptions like The Godfather 2, and it's no coincidence that George Lucas and Godfather director Francis Ford Coppola are best friends, with Lucas even creating the character of Han Solo after Mr. Coppola. Mr. Lucas went into the creation of Empire not trying to recreate the first Star Wars, but propel the saga and story into new and unfamiliar ground. So why do we love it so much? Again, we have to remove the nostalgia lens and ask what could make the second installment of this movie better than other installments of the prequel or sequel trilogy. And let's remember this exercise. We are still asking, are the original trilogy Star Wars movies the best era? The Empire Strikes Back starts with the stakes already high. Our familiar heroes are shown on screen right in the first moments. We don't get introduced to new main story characters until well after this scene. So right there, it's a way to become attached to the characters and stories from where we left off. Lucas does a good job to try and not confuse us or start with the grand idea where we have to learn new names, struggles, or places. Right away, our characters are put in danger. They don't win. They are on the run, and this is where it gets brilliant. Our heroes get separated. And this is the most pivotal reason why Empire was so well received, while again, doing its job so modestly and unassuming. It allowed us to develop the characters and not drown them in overly grand plot ideas. Luke escapes to Dagobah, and we learn more about him and his journey to becoming a Jedi from Master Yoda, who is a new character, the only new person we meet on Luke's adventure. And in a separate story, we follow the adventure of Han and Leia, who are escaping the Empire. They hide in an asteroid, get their characters developed more. They hide in Cloud City, where we meet the next new main character, Lando Calrissian, and they all get their characters even more developed. Now, you might say that there were a ton of new characters. What about the bounty hunters, Lobot, etc.? Well, they really aren't main characters. They are plot devices. You don't learn their names, you don't really need to. They are there to up the stakes or help solve situations for the characters. The reason why Empire works so well is that more time was spent on developing the already existing characters while keeping the new characters to a minimum, and only when it meant that they would move the story along. The main reasons for Yoda, Lando, and even the Emperor is that they help develop our main characters, period. We don't need to know where Yoda's from, his backstory. We don't need to know more about Lando other than he's from Han's criminal past. They are there to serve the story as character builders for the main characters in our story. The other reason why Empire works so well was the furthering of the villain story. In the original Star Wars, Darth Vader had minimal screen time. In The Empire Strikes Back, you start to develop the villain's plight. This is what balanced the movie so well. It kept it dangerous and also made an appeal for how human the villain was. You wanted to know more of the mystery behind the mask. He wasn't just a one-dimensional character like he was in Star Wars. He was developed as a character and given the beginnings of an arc. Going to the technical aspects of the movie, which we won't go into heavy detail because, let's be honest, if you're watching this and have gotten this far, chances are you know every single detail of the technical production. The movie essentially had the same team, with only new writers and now a new director at the helm. This worked in the movie's favor because it needed new eyes to further the story, which relied so much on character and soul, rather than grandiose epics. Again, it worked so unassumingly, yet it took a lot of artistry and talent by hundreds of individuals to get there. It was, yet again, lightning in a bottle, which Hollywood has tried to capture with sequels for decades now. Some are successful, but the majority try to get too big, try to capture the magic of the first film, and forget that it's the story and characters that made us watch the films for the first time in the first place. All the audience wants is to see their heroes in new situations, not the other way around, making too much spectacle of the situation, and not giving us enough time with our characters. It's why The Empire Strikes Back works. People have said it was the darker tone and more adult feel. Yeah, we can talk about darker tone all day long, but dark tone only makes sense when the characters go through struggles, and if that is disguised as tone, then we all need to watch more movies with darker tones where real characters have real struggles and aren't heroes right in the first scene that can solve everything. To be completely honest, I saw Return of the Jedi when I was 5 years old, and I vaguely remember it. But what I remember clearly is playing with the action figures and listening to this tape from 1979. The original Star Wars audiobook. This was my gateway into a galaxy far, far away.
This is the story of Star Wars. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear R2-D2 beep, like this.
Return of the Jedi, released in 1983. Now, it's a feat to have one movie capture an audience's attention. It's like winning the Powerball lottery twice, but to do it again and make it 3 times? That's downright almost impossible. Here is where we will look at Return of the Jedi without a nostalgia lens and make some hard realizations. The Return of the Jedi has to thank Empire Strikes Back's success and the ability to develop the characters so strongly. Because in Jedi, it really allows us to enjoy more action without so much development. We are able to be introduced to new characters right off the bat, such as Jabba, without having to explain who he is. He is Han's new master, the one Lucas had been actually setting up since A New Hope. But Jabba's scene only satisfies one thing: getting Han back. You can also say it's exposition to establish Luke as a more developed Jedi. it really does nothing to further the main story of Luke and Vader or Leia versus the Empire. It's a huge sidetrack, and it takes up a lot of time. And this is where critics and smart fans did tear this film apart. It focuses its time on unnecessary items in the story that can cause distractions in the main plot. Some critics at the time even said that this was pandering to the already huge marketing machine that George Lucas had built. You introduce new characters, you sell more merchandise. This was the main criticisms with the time spent at Jabba's, and the most criticism came from the adorable Ewoks, which Lucas was heavily criticized for putting in there to appeal to children to sell more toys. We won't argue that point here. There are plenty of videos and forums for that. What we are here to dissect is, do these characters help or hurt the main story's objective? And that objective is to defeat the Empire and get resolution with Luke's father. When you answer these questions, we can quickly say, no, they don't. Jabba has no ties with the Empire, and Jabba did not further that story. And the Ewoks, even though they helped, they weren't key to destroying the Emperor. And they merely added elements to fill a feature film plot. Although, as a kid, I have to be honest, I loved both the Ewoks and Jabba. Alright, no more nostalgia glasses. There have only been a couple times where a final film in the franchise's story has blown me away. The ultimate granddaddy is The Lord of the Rings. The other was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And the rest are floating around the ether, all tied for third spot or lost in my memory banks. The main complaints in this last installment of the trilogy is the laziness of bringing back the Death Star. Lucas said the reason he brought it back was because of the advances in technology, and it would allow him to do a better job with the space battle. In that statement lies the problem. Battles don't make the story. Updating matte techniques and motion control doesn't make a better situation. It's how your characters enter the battle and what has prepared them both in the choices that they've made and where they are emotionally that makes the battle. Long, gratuitous battle scenes are also to blame. Between the scenes at Jabba's palace, the battle on the Forest Moon, the space battle over the Death Star, the only real battle that drives an emotional story and drives the character is the battle with Luke and Vader. And that was less of a battle and more of an emotional chess game. And we can really care less if the whole fleet gets destroyed. We have no emotional investment in that. But really, the only things I care about is that the Millennium Falcon comes home safe, and Lando. And let's be honest, we feel safe with the Ewoks. The stakes are really set in the favor to the cute bears winning. But the real stakes all rely on Luke, which is how it should be. But the way that we arrive there, it's a little superficial with the new Death Star as the whole driver. The story could have worked without a new Death Star. The story revolves around Luke and Vader at this point, with Leia's fight with the Empire actually being secondary. But it could have taken place with another device, with still big stakes. At this point in the era, the main emotion comes from the Skywalker saga and how Luke and Vader conclude their relationship. The Return of the Jedi was ultimately a safe film that took no risks. And that's not bad, nor is it good. It just is. It's what we call these days fan service. But nonetheless, it was still a good tie-up of a story. The son returned to redeem the fallen father to fulfill his destiny. The monarch was able to bring a dictatorship down with a small rebellion. And the lone warrior was able to find a cause and fall in love. It's true that it could have been better, but it's hard to find that lightning in a bottle a third time. And I've tried really hard to look objectively at these films. And I've made arguments as to why these films are the best in all the Star Wars eras. But let's just be honest real quick. Nostalgia does play a big part of anyone's film-going experience, and it should. Cinema allows us to escape. We form emotional bonds with the characters on screen, as they've given us happy times, filled us with wonder, have been there when we're sad, have helped us build our own imaginations. And seeing this as a kid, it did have a deep emotional impression on me, which shows this. We have 4 different eras, told in 4 different spans of generational times. The early 80s, the early 2000s, the 2010s, and now the early 2020s. So if you were born in any one of these eras, you probably have an emotional connection with the Star Wars era that's closest to you. And as Star Wars fans, we should all be passionate about what we like, what we don't like, and what we hold nostalgic to drive it all. We would be a bland species if we held what we liked and didn't based on pure logic. But we always remember things by the way that they made us feel. And the Star Wars Original Era Trilogy has made an emotional impression on me in a way that no other film franchise will. But we have a bigger question to explore. If the original trilogy is the best, then why are the others not? And am I wrong about that? We will explore that question on the next videos in this series. But for now, let us know in the comments what era you think is the best and why. Do you agree or disagree with my dissertation of why I think they are the best? Let us all know. One thing is true. We are all Star Wars fans, and we all love Star Wars. Now that we've covered the original trilogy, now it's time to explore the prequel trilogy, the next era in Star Wars, and do a breakdown of what makes it great or where it falls short of the original. To watch that, click the thumbnails on your screen now. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.